couple of housekeeping items. Of course, you could be anywhere in Dallas. You decide to hang out with us. It really means a lot. I am a very big believer in value for time, and I hope you get the value for it tonight. The other thing is we have two sponsors tonight. We try to always get two sponsors, generally speaking. The first sponsor is the space that we're in, Yum Brands. So can we please get a round of applause for Yum Brands? They are the reason why we have the space. Were accommodating for us for the conference, among many other things. They have really been a phenomenal partner. I can't imagine another organization going and bending over backwards the way that they have for a lot of things that we've done in order to support the developer community. So huge kudos to them. I do know for a fact that they are hiring right now. So if that's something that's on your radar, please check out their careers page. There's definitely some jobs there that they're looking for, especially I believe in React Native, and I know there's some Java positions as well. So, and I think there's some React ones as well, if I'm not mistaken. So check those out. The second sponsor tonight is Sonar. So they gave me a little readout to do. They were trying to have somebody come here to share some value and bring some swag and stuff, but we couldn't make the flights work because obviously. So the airports have whatever issues. So their flight was actually canceled. And so they sent me this. And a word from our sponsor, Sonar. AI coding assistants help you generate code fast, but that speed can create a bottleneck in code reviews, leading to bugs and security flaws. Sonar Cube helps you solve this engineering productivity paradox with a trust and verify approach. Vibe with confidence, knowing every line of code, human or AI generated, is automatically checked for quality and security. Verify instantly with real-time feedback and security checks directly in your IDE, and when you push code with automated code reviews. Deliver maintainable code by ensuring all new code meets the high standards in quality and security before moving to production or being added to the code base. And that's not all. This week, Sonar announced the Sonar Summit. Okay. A virtual conference for the future of software development. Be one of the first 500 to register and claim your free Sonar shirt at sonar.com. I didn't know that last part. So really cool there. I'm not on the speaker lineup though. I'm just saying. Highly check them out. Highly recommend checking them out. Sonar.com. They're the reason why we have pizza tonight. So kudos to Sonar, please. Thank you. So tonight is a night of JavaScript, which means all talks are .NET related. We have some really good talks. I actually, just sneak peek, I had an entire talk wrote already, and I was refining it. I was practicing it. Flawless. It's chef's kiss. And last night, something very interesting happened. And I pushed that talk to the side and created a brand new talk because I don't think I could make anything more impactful than this thing that happened last night. To give you a sneak peek, there was a very, very, very well-known name brand organization that had, and just my luck, I went to their website and they had a big production issue and they leaked all kinds of information in production, and I got to screen grab it. And so we will talk about this. I've hidden some of their personal information just so I'm not that guy, but we will talk about this because I feel like there's a lot of learning that we can get out of this one. And so that talk will be last. There are two people, if I'm not mistaken, it's two people, giving their very first talks tonight. So please make sure everybody be extra cruel and make sure like it's very memorable for them. Throw the pizza, yeah. No tomatoes, we got tomato sauce. No, sincerely, please be kind. Please understand that people are trying to share whatever value that they have. One of the things that we really try to pride ourselves on is highlighting local talent. And whenever we find people that want to give a talk and they've never given one before, we try to present them that opportunity because who knows, they may end up becoming the next Kent C. Dodds or anybody else that you admire in the field of tech. And I know for a fact that several people have given their first talks and it led to them getting future opportunities and other speaking engagements. So we try to present that whenever we can. If anyone here is ever interested in giving a talk, I'm a DM away on those. And also we have a whole list on the Dallas Software Developers website. Actually, if you go to dallassoftwaredevelopers.org, he does not commandeered his laptop. See, it's not even saved as a link. Oh, is that what it is? Yeah. He remembers it. This section here. Is it in community? where you can sign up. Yeah, become a speaker, apply to speak, and we get a whole list. So we try to tap into those whenever we can. And so if you're interested in speaking, you can sign up there, and we'll probably email you letting you know whenever we have a topic coming up, especially if it's in the section of what it is that you want to speak about. So hopefully, if you're interested in giving a talk and you've got something really interesting to talk about, and it's within any field of technology, because we're not a technology focus group, we're a community of developers. So we try to rotate the meetings. And one thing I will put on everyone's radar right now, we are doing for the final meetup of the year, it will be December 9th here, obviously, a night of AI. I know this was the big hit every single time that we've done it. We always have people coming out the woodworks for that one. So December 9th will be a night of AI. I have not sourced all my speakers yet, so if that's something that you're interested in, and please don't say this is how you use cursor, like something a little bit more advanced, then let's go ahead and have that conversation. I know we're gonna have at least 2 really good speakers on this one. I don't know how many speakers we'll do for that night since it'll be the last meetup of the year, but we'll probably do something really interesting and big. Maybe we can get a speaker to fly out or something like that. We'll figure that one out. All right. With that being said, I will go to our very first speaker. Sandra, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the space tonight. This is my first time, so first don't be cruel, like Danny said. Tonight, I will be talking about WebAssembly. And my name is Sandra Chaparro, and I work at Mayan Technologies. Those are some of the tools that I use work. I'm more like a full stack. And I chose WebAssembly because I like to learn about different topics, and I know WebAssembly is used for some web applications, and some of us don't know a lot about WebAssembly. Some of us haven't heard about it at all, and I think it will be a good opportunity for me to show what I learned and try to share the general information about WebAssembly tonight. So first, let's start. I want to know who of you have heard about WebAssembly. Oh, yes, nice. Okay, so let's start with what is not WebAssembly. First, WebAssembly is not a programming language. It's not a framework, and it's not a library. Well, then, what is WebAssembly then? WebAssembly is a low-level binary format for web applications to run at near native speeds. So this is very helpful for programming languages that are not meant to be for the web. And this is a picture of some of the programming languages that can be used and be compiled for WebAssembly. And here we have some of the steps. We can see that we have a high-level language, let's say C++ or Python, and then we compile it to WebAssembly, and then we execute it, and we got the machine code that can be executed by the browser. So that's faster than having a high-level language. Of course, machine code is faster, right? And we have different programming languages have different compilers for WebAssembly, so there's a lot of support for that. And this is the time lapse about when WebAssembly was announced. It was announced 10 years ago in 2015, then was first released in 2017 and became official in 2019 by the W3C. So in the 2019, where it was adopted as a standard, is where some web applications started adopting WebAssembly. I will show more about which real web applications that we know of uses WebAssembly. But okay, we have 2 representations for WebAssembly. We have the textual and the binary. The textual is more human readable, not superhuman readable, but it's like assembly language. I don't know if any of you have seen or worked with that or practiced at school. And the other representation is binary. And binary, of course, is not human readable, and we use this more for execution for WebAssembly. And as I said that it's not human readable, we need a compiler for this. And some of the compilers that we see there are for WebAssembly. One of the most popular is mscripten, but there's different ones for Go or Python and other ones. Okay, now that I shared that we can use other programming languages for the web, does that mean that JavaScript is dead? Of course not, right? It works alongside JavaScript, so it can work together. It's not that it's going to replace or that it's going to get rid of JavaScript, no. So they work together and they help each other to be fast. And I have here an example where it's not like a whole section of real application. It's just like a small block of code where we can see how we can use WebAssembly with JavaScript, because WebAssembly doesn't have access to the DOM or events. So this is how they complement each other, because JavaScript can do that. So it can help WebAssembly to connect with APIs or use events. And for other programming languages, JavaScript helps WebAssembly to be like a glue between WebAssembly and the browser. They can handle the DOM manipulation or access the APIs. So as we can see, it's not going to replace, it's going to help each other. And so now what are some of the benefits of WebAssembly? So we can have the applications to run faster due to the low-level binary execution that WebAssembly can provide us. And also is language agnostic. It's not that we can only use or C++ or Java. We have different options to work with WebAssembly. And modules can be integrated with JavaScript. And also another benefit is that WebAssembly runs in a sandbox. So it's like protecting the application. It doesn't go directly into your host. And that's another benefit. But at the same time, like everything, it has disadvantages. And as I mentioned that JavaScript will work like a glue, that's also a disadvantage, because that will require more code for the application to work together, the WebAssembly with the other programming language. So that glue, it can be more code or more heavy for the web application that makes it a disadvantage. And WebAssembly can directly manipulate the DOM. That's why also JavaScript goes here. But maybe in the future it will can, we don't know. And many people say that WebAssembly will be something like Java applets, that they were like, oh, wow, it's going to revolutionize the web. So we don't know yet, but this is the information that we have. And also debugging WebAssembly is hard because it's like more low level, so it's hard for us to debug. And for many web apps, well-optimized JavaScript is actually smaller. So if we can do a web application good and light with JavaScript, we don't need WebAssembly. So it depends on the case, will benefit us. And here we have some real world examples that web applications that use WebAssembly. So all of us, or maybe I think all of us, know Figma, for instance, and that helps. WebAssembly helps Figma with the image and all that heavy calculation and intense work that Figma do with the, I don't know, editing pictures. Same for Canva, SQLite, CapCut, and AutoCAD. For instance, AutoCAD was possible to move to WebAssembly even when the code base was old. And now WebAssembly allows AutoCAD to be working good in the web. And so now WebAssembly, where it's headed. So we don't know, maybe it could redefine what we call the web. And also, maybe there's a bright future for JavaScript and WebAssembly. And like the last one says, the line between native and web is blurring, and maybe WebAssembly is a bridge for that and will benefit a lot. So as a conclusion for my talk, my goal wasn't to convince you that WebAssembly is like the reality, the great for future. All of us have different opinions. Some of us like one tool or other tools. I was more trying to explain the information that what WebAssembly is, what it can do, and where it might fit. So like I said, the future is never guaranteed, and being informed and learn about different topics can help us make better decisions. Thank you, and here is the QR code for my LinkedIn.
All right. Let me get to a slide where I have notes. So I mainly just wanted to talk about some image optimizations we can do on the front end. So when I was at CYC, I got invited to the Magnolia JS conference, and I just kind of showed up, and there was a hackathon. So yeah, I didn't read the notes or anything. But I entered that, and I got third place with this idea I had of putting like a mobile web server in a van. This is just the mock-up for it. And yeah, very strange. But the idea the idea that I had while I was making this project for the hackathon was like, it'd be really cool if there was a printer in the van that people could send me messages through a contact form on the bottom of the van's website, which makes sense, right? So, all right, so the plan, I needed to build a form for the input, send data to a local server, which is going to be in the van, obviously, and then I had to figure out how to use a thermal printer's like weird ancient language. And then all this stuff's in JavaScript too, or it's like available, but yeah, no profit. All right, so we got a poll here. We can go either way. Do y'all want to see some code? Or do y'all want to print random things on my printer that's up here? Hands? Oh, okay, okay. Good, because that was the next slide. So if you scan this, it'll take you to the fake mock-up that's going to go in the van, right? So this is actually running locally here through a Cloudflare tunnel. And just feel free to scare me and just print whatever. Well, no, don't, you know, this is a show, but otherwise, yeah. Oh, okay, I can't show you all that one. There it goes. So yeah, I just want this to go the whole time because it's kind of funny. All right, so once you've signed up, obviously, or when you scan that QR code, you know, you'll be taken to this form. All this is just front-end JavaScript. You'll fill that out, and yeah, I made everything required because I thought it'd be more fun if you had to send an image. But how does it work? Okay, so with like the cheap thermal printers, there's not a lot of drivers or things available, especially for Mac. It's so distracting. But all right, but I did find some stuff online, and I was able to like shoehorn everything together. But the main thing I wanted to talk about that's probably like actually relevant to some of our daily lives is how we can optimize some images on the front end before sending them to server, which can save us on egress cost and storage. And this is how you do it. It's like 2 lines. So I actually thought this, I was hoping that would be more difficult because I'd have more to talk about there. But that was, sorry, it's distracting me again. That's all you have to do. There's a built-in API. You can just automatically scale an image, right? And I'll have some more information on that later, but that's the first half of it. And then for this printer in particular, I had to do grayscale. So I did that with just a little bit of CSS and Canvas. All right, key takeaway. I went from this image here was 12 megabytes down to 39 kilobytes, so 99.7% smaller. absolutely free because this is all done client side on the user's device. Now imagine, obviously, you know, we're not gonna be storing like black and white images, but think about this for like maybe an avatar photo on like a social media site or something. Or I don't know if you've dealt with like user content, they will send just the most bizarre, bloated files you've ever seen in your life. So. But yeah, that's the main thing. And then I like the joke at the bottom, would you rather be holding a swimming pool or a shot glass? All right, and what's next? So I want to keep working on this project because it's pretty fun. I'm gonna have like a whole dashboard in this van, have this printer going. I'll just be driving down the road, not expect it, and it'll just scare me because someone will send me a message. And then that's sort of the main thing. Oh yeah, and if y'all send messages, by the way, I'm gonna dox y'all and throw this stuff on Twitter. I do have your EXIF data. All right. Anyway, that was my talk. That was my facial expression the whole time. Yeah. But yeah, thanks.
So, hi, I'm Amanda, and Danny, actually, you're wrong. All three of us have never spoken before. So, there you go. So, my first time to speak too. It's something like this, so very exciting. So, please be indulgent if I trip over my words or fall on my face. So, today I wanted to talk to you guys not about a cool framework I'm using or a fun new AI app that I've built. No, we're going to talk about something boring. We're going to talk about the importance of the boring parts of JavaScript. It's going to be a good one, guys. All right. So this talk came about because of this comic by The Oatmeal. It really resonated with me. It's only a small part of the comic, but you guys should definitely check it out. The full quote is, "But you could also argue that the administrative, boring aspects of art matters too. And by jumping to the fun part, you are denying yourself the process. And the process should matter, not just the part where you hold up the painting and say, 'Hey, internet, look what I made.'" Now, this comic is referring to AI-generated artwork specifically, but I think it's relevant in multiple ways across technology as a whole. Now you may be saying, "Amanda, why are you such a Luddite?" And to that I say, rude, but also fair. I'm not saying we shouldn't embrace new technology. That mentality as a person in tech would be kind of ridiculous. But I'm curious, it's time for some audience interaction. How many of you use AI to generate code for you? How many of you use a framework when you work in JavaScript? How many of you understand what the class keyword is doing under the hood? And how many of you would be willing to get up here and explain it in detail in front of everyone right now? Not you, Danny. So my question is, but why though? Why are we using something without having an understanding of how it truly works? Because it's hard, maybe a little boring. Maybe it's part of the process we aren't interested in understanding or learning or spending time to learn. We just want to get to the fun part of creating the next new app. But I think there's power in learning these boring parts, and I'm going to teach you a little piece of that tonight. So tonight we're learning about the class keyword. And I'm unironically so giddy to give this talk. So, a long, long time ago, back in 2015, ES6 came out. And before that, in JavaScript, there was not a straightforward way to connect data and functionality. This is the principle of encapsulation, which pertains to the problem: how do I bundle together my data and the functionality on that data in a way that makes sense, is easy to read, and easy to find within my code base? So what can we do? Well, we can use a function. Seems like an okay solution, right? I have my data, I have my functionality on that data. I can call my getOlder function and increment on the data I want. So what is the problem? Well, as we create the Amanda object, the Adam object, the getOlder function is being copied onto them. It's cloned onto every instance of a person you create with this create person function. Imagine we create thousands of people with this function. Each of them would have the same cloned get older function on them. And that is just not memory efficient. So I wonder, can we do better? Can we extract out our get older function into a single place? I think we can using the prototype chain. So in this example, we have created our second object called a person store here, and that's where our get older function is living now. But how does JavaScript actually know to connect this object to our existing create person function? Well, we're going to use the object create technique. Object.create always returns an empty object. So at first, new person is simply an empty object. We're adding things to it with dot notation like name and age, and then returning it into the Amanda variable. Now, when we call Amanda.getOlder, the JavaScript interpreter searches for it in the global memory, finds the Amanda object, and looks to find getOlder on it. But it's not there, is it? So how does that work? Well, JavaScript is prototypal in nature. So what does that actually mean? So when object.create is used and the empty object is created, it's not actually totally empty. There is a hidden property on that object. And on every object in JavaScript, this is the proto property, aka a prototypical link. It's technically double underscore proto double underscore, but that's a mouthful, so I'm just calling it proto. When the JavaScript interpreter does not find a given property on an object, it doesn't freak out. It goes straight to the proto property on that object and checks its value, where it's linking to find that missing property. When object.create was called, the value passed into it is where the proto link will reference. So here it is the person store object. That is how we have access to the getOlder function. Technically, the proto property is hidden, but I made this image to make it clearer for you to visualize it. Now, look at this. Before, we had to clone the getOlder function on every individual person object we created, which was a lot of wasted memory, but now it's neither. You can still access it naturally through the prototypical link. This is what it means when we describe JavaScript as prototypal in nature. It searches up the proto property chain until it can find what it's looking for, or error, or return null. Now this is great. It's very sophisticated code and works just fine. This is really all you need, technically. But it is very verbose. So what can we do to shorten some of the logic we have to write? We can use the new keyword. This automates a lot of this more verbose logic. The new keyword automatically creates an object and returns it. It also automatically sets the proto property for us as well. And you may ask, wait a minute, where does that link to? Before, we manually set the proto link with object.create, and now we aren't. Also, I previously set properties on the new person object using dot notation, but now it's being automatically generated. How do I set properties on the object without knowing its label? So it's kind of ruined here, but what do you guys think this auto-created object is going to be called? Just a guess, because it's definitely not a confusing keyword that makes it difficult to describe. Yep, it's this. The object created and returned by the new keyword is known as this inside your function. Always love a good this. But notice our function is gone. So where can that be held? Where can the proto property be linking to when the object is automated by the new keyword? To understand this, we have to go on a little bit of a side quest. In JavaScript, functions are both functions and objects. They're a function-object combo. If you use the parentheses after the function name, you are accessing the function portion. If you use dot notation, then you are accessing the object portion. This piece is important to understand. All functions within their objects have a prototype property. Not proto like before, but prototype. It is not a hidden property. We just don't often look into objects on functions. The value of the prototype property is initially an empty object. Accessing the prototype property object via dot notation, we will store our shared functions. Now, any object returned by createPerson will have access to these functions. So let me run through it all again. When createPerson is invoked with the new keyword specifically, an object is automatically created inside it and referred to as this. The this object will have a hidden proto property on it that is linking to the createPerson's functions objects prototype property, which is in and of itself an object that now has the getOlder function we need. That is how the connection is made. That's a lot, right? But the new keyword is actually automating a lot of it. So we don't need to manually write it out. We just need to sort of hopefully understand it. So that leads us to the class keyword. It took a little while to get here, huh? The class keyword is syntactic sugar, which means that nothing is changing logically under the hood. It may look different, but everything that is happening in a class is actually what I previously described to you. With the previously mentioned new keyword, we had two important parts. There's the function that produces and returns the object automatically, and there's the stored shared functions. They're bundled together, but we had to manually declare them separately within our code. We called a function with the new keyword, and then later manually added the store function to the prototype property object. Now with the class keyword, we get to write these two separate declarations into one place. As soon as you declare a class, you get a function object combo. When you write out a constructor in that class, you are technically declaring the function part of that under the hood. And below that, you have the prototype property object, but no longer have to assign the methods. You just have to list them and you can access them. So that's it. Nothing else is different. With the class keyword, it certainly looks a lot cleaner and is easier to read, but that's also the dangerous part because it hides what is actually going on underneath. And I think that's why so many developers struggle to understand it and debug it. But now you know. Now you know how the class keyword works in detail, unless you already did. So you may be thinking, okay, cool, but what's the point? My point in all of this, beyond teaching you a really cool piece of JavaScript history that I love, is to impress upon you the importance of understanding foundations. As we evolve further in tech, there is a continued level of abstraction going on that can obfuscate the logic working underneath. The process of learning and understanding what goes on under the hood makes you a better developer. It makes you better at understanding, architecting, writing, and debugging code. I think we're at an interesting time in tech history where it's easier than ever to shortcut our code. That means it's even more important than ever to instill in ourselves as engineers the importance of understanding all of our code as best as we can, even the boring parts. Thank you for your time, and please feel free to connect with me. I can share them.
All right, this is going to be an interesting one because I have a lot of moving parts on this one. So There's probably going to be a lot of going back and forth, but I want to at least set the tone for what we're going to be talking about. This is going to, I'll be honest, I kind of geeked out in a negative and positive way when I saw the mistake yesterday. And I was like, number one, I think it's going to be really cool to kind of learn from it, share it with others, and all that good stuff. And I think the second part that I'm kind of geeked out about is, as I was explaining this to a couple people yesterday in a friend Discord of mine, they weren't really grasping why this is a big deal. They're like, it's just an error message. Like, what's the big deal? And so there's gonna be a lot of nuances here. Just out of curiosity, just so I know how far back I need to go in order for people to understand this, how many of y'all have are familiar with error message on the front end, like what that looks like? Okay. Okay. No. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm gonna kind of explain this a little bit. So, obviously, the title of the talk, if you can't read, it's when good apps go wrong. I came up with that. So, production error handling that doesn't expose your secrets is a very big deal. So, the fact that an error of this size, or at least this exposing, is pretty significant. Now, what's funny is for a lot of websites, or maybe smaller companies, this might not necessarily be as big or egregious compared to others, right? The reason why I think this is pretty significant is, number one, they let a lot of internal data out within this one. It's not really ideal, but kudos to them, because I think within 6 minutes, I saw the rollback happen. So they were on top of it. They saw the outage right away, were able to roll it back, probably some really great logging or something to kind of notify them that something went wrong. But what I ended up doing, and I should probably pull this up to kind of give some ideas. Have y'all heard about, and this is not really, by the way, transparently, this is not to blast the company, because there's nothing, it happens. It's all part of our journey. It's really hard to be a dev of significant experience if you've never made a mistake that's pretty significant that you remember whenever you're taking a shower or something like that. This is definitely one of those. But I think there's a lot of things that a lot of developers of all levels can kind of learn from here. So no shade to them, no shade even to the developers. I just think it's a really interesting learning opportunity for everybody. How many of y'all have heard about the Steam machine? Okay, not a lot. Steam is basically coming out with like if you're not familiar with Steam, it's like a video game marketplace for PC users. They're coming out with their console version where you could actually plug it into a TV and play it as a console. And a few of my friends shared this in the Discord yesterday that we all chatting. And I was like, oh, I haven't heard anything about this. This is like not even on my radar, right? And so this was the website. And pretty nice website, I think. Like they got a lot going for it. And as I was scrolling through, I'm like, oh, okay. And then they had one thing that I'm like, I got to buy it now. If I can get to this. And that's what sold me on it. There's an LED strip. So I was like, got to buy it now, obviously. But it was in this section. You'll see here, there's this video that's playing here. There's this text that's showing. There's some more text, and then there's another video, right? This is where the error was. Just going off of this look, like, could you imagine or like think of what the error would potentially look like in this setting? It didn't even make sense when I saw the error, why it was showing it in this section. But this is kind of where we're at on this. By the way, I guess Steam got past the block, I'm just saying. And so this is the error, if it'll go there. Come on. Okay. This is the error. Hard to see. I did cover their data. I didn't want to leak it. But the big egregious thing for me, going back to this, okay. The big thing for me in this one particularly, and I'll zoom it in, but you can see here, it was all the text that was gone. But what was interesting to me is it said it could not read properties of undefined for video and then their internal naming conventions. I found this really interesting, mainly because, and this is kind of zoomed in so that way it's a little bit easier for everybody to read here. I wanted to hide everything. I didn't want to kind of expose what it is. One big thing for me that makes me a little nervous in particular is when you expose all of your naming conventions in a database, if people are trying to pull that information, or if someone has malicious intent, that makes things a little bit easier for them. That's kind of nerve-wracking for me in a big way. But I also found it pretty interesting based off the website that we just saw. Their text was coming in via video file instead of something else, or at least it was named in that way, which I find very interesting. It wasn't the actual video portions of the website itself. So kind of going through this a little bit. with the incident in particular, an error occurred while processing the request, right? You would never want to show a user that. And side note, by the way, that refresh button, super optimistic because it never worked. And very, very, very confident in itself. But generally, that's kind of what it shows. It's not a great user experience overall. It's not great for a non-technical user that's on the website as well. They won't have a clue what's going on, why they're seeing these errors. You need fallback states. 4 years ago, I gave one of my highest rated talks ever on React error boundaries. And I'm like, this wouldn't help so much. So let's kind of jump into this a little bit. Obviously, internal server errors are never great, but we would never want to expose our internal naming conventions. We'd want something else to kind of be there. We would definitely not want, especially in the console logs, stack traces or pieces of information that are saying, hey, this thing is undefined, et cetera, et cetera. You got to clean up those console logs as well. I didn't want to show that because it was like really sensitive info on that one, but that should be hidden, or it should not even be exposed in a production environment. So either this was really hastily put out, or someone forgot to clean up something in a code review or something along those lines. But there was definitely some, in my opinion, failures of established practices that you should essentially have to make sure that you're putting out performant code. Especially an organization of this level, this is not something that you would expect really to be exposed in this light. So what are the costs of the exposures, in my opinion? Number one, obviously security risks. That's the big one. I know cybersecurity is having a field day with all this internally. So we obviously don't want free, I put reconnaissance, but really like information for attackers, stack traces, database connection strings, their naming conventions, internal paths. You wouldn't want anybody to have this. It's terrible UX. As a user, when I saw the error, I was not happy in the slightest. It's a debugging nightmare as well, because if they're not logging any of this and they're just seeing those errors, pinpointing the issue down the road is going to obviously be a very big issue for a lot of things. But on top of that, trust erosion. This is obviously, especially for the average consumer, if you're going to that website trying to buy a $600 console, you're probably losing a little bit of confidence seeing that when you're there at the time and point of purchase. It's never a good feeling for someone to feel that way. So our goal today is to replace, obviously, these noisy, leaky errors with safe, actionable, and observable patterns that protect your security posture while improving your user experience. To me, if I'm being completely honest, the most terrifying bug you can have in production is never a 404 error or a button not matching a color scheme, but it's this. This is terrifying for me, especially on a team or a team that has to handle this, because now there's going to be a whole bunch of triage after the fact of renaming everything the way that you need to in order to make sure that we're not exposing things internally, making sure that we're updating practices. Of course, probably getting a tongue lashing from the security teams as well and having to deal with that. Probably getting some mandatory security training as well thrown in there. So there's a lot. So what I did, in order to kind of show this a little bit better, this is going to be the challenging part of this presentation for me, I think. I created a mock website, and I was working on this literally all night since seeing this, because I'm like, how can I showcase this in a way? And look at that. Minimal design because time. But I made sure that we handle a lot of things. So my idea was to have like a city library kind of situation here. Now I'm gonna have to control it like this, unfortunately, so that way I can kind of see everything. But the idea is it's a city library. I've created 5 errors within this website so we can kind of see them in real time and how we would mitigate them. The errors really following kind of what Steam essentially did, so you would see a better version of that, right? So we'll start with like the first page here, the book catalog. This is essentially what they were showing, right? You would never want to showcase something like, maybe I need to zoom in a little bit. Yeah, and I can see that a little bit. So we wouldn't want to ever show something like this. There's way too much personal information there. We wouldn't want all this internal data to be shared as well. I think it's kind of a bad situation all around, right? When it comes to obviously like internal data of a catalog and things like that, we would want to avoid obviously exposing. How am I going to do this? Let me actually just mirror the displays for a second so that way I can see, because there's just no way this is going to work that way. Normally we're in the room where it's right behind you, so it's easier, but this one is a little tough. Displays, display settings. What? Okay. Isn't that something? All right. And let's mirror. And that will allow me. There we go. I can see everything. Okay, perfect. So I'll go back and forth between this, but essentially we wouldn't want to show, obviously, like the database query, that's just wild, but we wouldn't want to show a lot of this internal information, especially like the stack trace. So this would be a better version of what this would essentially look like. So it's books.fix or -fix. And essentially, come on now. This would be a much better user experience overall, right? If this thing will cooperate. Oh my goodness. I see that. I see that. I don't know why it's acting so strange. If this would just cooperate. Do I have too much going on or something on this computer? There we go. So obviously unable to load the books. We encountered an issue loading the book catalog. Please try again. Obviously very confident. Retry button that doesn't work. Just similar to Steam in that regard. But we give them a reference error instead, right? So they're seeing a much better experience. We're not exposing internal data in a way that would obviously be egregious. And of course, this is the fallback of a React error boundary. So kind of going into the code a little bit, we can kind of see here what that looks like, right? So we would have, I'm just kind of throwing a random error here, and I'm simulating, I don't know what's going on with this thing. I have some books saved. Oh my goodness. And we have an error boundary here. So we have a custom error boundary which has a fallback UI. So essentially, if it sees an error, it feels an error, a UI state will be its fallback default state. So we're displaying what it is that we'd want to showcase in that regard. Now we obviously have unable to load the books. We encountered an issue loading the book catalog. Please try again. And then our reference error is our error.error ID. So instead of exposing anything terrible, this is a much better experience for everyone involved there. They're obviously going to have way more confidence in the application as a whole as well. And then if you were to see it working, we can then see it's essentially what the book catalog should theoretically look like with everything working in the way that it is. And of course, if you haven't picked that up, check that one out. I got some, lack of shame there. But this is obviously be the way that we'd want to see that. And so now let's go to a search page, for example. Let's say, you know what, I did like that guidebook. So let's kind of search up a guide. And then we automatically see again, another error. Oh my goodness. What is going on? All right. And so here you can kind of see we're exposing some data. Obviously, we're exposing the SQL query, which is wild, but the database, this is the same stack trace that we would essentially show. This is not what we'd want to be showcasing at all, right? It's one of the worst things that you could probably show in that regard. And so the potential fix of what we'd want to see in this situation instead, obviously, we're using environment-specific error handling. This would be env-based. And so I'll just type in the same guide. And development error details, we would be showcasing something along these lines. Oh, the fallback UI did not showcase here. So, oh, I know why now. Dang it, this is what happens when you make a thing the night before. But essentially, we're in development mode. So instead of the environment being production, I wanted to switch to development mode, but it's development mode by default. So if we're in local dev mode, for example, we would see all this information there to help the developer kind of go with what they'd want to do. But if that is misconfigured and we now have our environment variable not toggled correctly, and now we're showcasing users development mode, this would also be a terrible experience as well. And so I'm almost afraid to try and switch the variables to see what would happen. But let's try, see it working. And then if everything works, hey, it worked. Okay, I didn't think it was going to work. All right. And now you would see the book pop up correctly if everything is configured the accurate way. Now let's kind of go and look at this real fast. So when we look at the search fix, for example, we have our environment-specific error handling. Can you all see that clearly? Okay, perfect. So the implementation here is we're using, if y'all haven't been to many of my talks where like I'm very anti committing your API keys, like this is one of those moments. I'm actually making a tutorial for it just so I can put it out tomorrow to ensure that we have people not doing that, because we just had another situation actually recently, which I probably should have included in the talk, the clip of it. Someone committed their Google Cloud API key to GitHub again, and they got a $55,000 bill in 60 minutes. And so it's like, please, there are bots that scour websites like that just looking for you to expose that. Do not fall for this. Like, be very, very careful. If you need a better way of utilizing your API keys, use environment variables, put it in a .env file, and then when you upload it to websites like Vercel, or for your deployments like Vercel or Cloudflare, they have an environment variable section usually within your settings, and you can put those variables in there. So please avoid that. I'm gonna make a whole tutorial on it because I think it's needed based on a conversation that we had earlier in the Discord. But if we go through the search fix, I wish I can go faster through this. So you can see here we have are we in development mode, essentially, which is the toggle between environment variables. So if our environment variable is showing development mode, we're going to go to that UI. Otherwise, we'll show the production issues instead. I'm almost afraid to restart the server, so that is why I'm not switching it. But essentially, that would be the fix for that. Now, I want to kind of showcase our next one in regards to reservations. With reservations, we're reserving a book, right? And within that reserve, we have a fallback UI of obviously like there's an error here. But I wanted to take this a step further. And instead of just showcasing that fallback UI, I wanted attempts to occur where it's trying to reconnect or reestablish itself in a way. So you can kind of see here we have our, oh my goodness, I don't know why it's freezing. Well, I'm about to get a new work laptop, so I'm not too worried about that one. But let's see here. So we'll see the fix. You can see this fallback UI, and you see it's attempting to reconnect every single time. Now it finally establishes connection and goes back. A user obviously would feel a lot more confident with it, especially with the spinner. It knows that something actively is occurring, so it knows it's not being just idle. And due to that, they can kind of make their own assumptions of, hey, it's failing to reconnect. I should probably just try back later, or something along those lines. Or you could have another default of, after 5 failed attempts, show a user, hey, please check back in 60 minutes. This is really valuable, especially in financial industries. One prime example of this, and I have it on my phone, dang it, but I have a mortgage through a company, right? And when I went to go check my mortgage, I saw 8 different red errors on the side of the screen. I was like, oh my God, did they erase my mortgage? Because yay. But they didn't. They didn't. But anytime you're dealing with financials, people get scared. And one big issue with that in particular is there is no delay that's acceptable when my money is in the conversation. And so for a lot of people, this is something that is a big issue. And your fallback UI must be flawless in these situations. The earlier talks that you can look online that I gave on React error boundaries at Render ATL, for example, has an entire banking UI that I built out to kind of showcase this, where you would have some kind of fallback that would show what is going on. The one thing that I always go back to in regards to not just really the user experience, but more my focus has always been along how do humans react to the information that they're getting, and how do you establish and maintain trust long term, especially when you're talking about certain websites like financials. In order to maintain trust, it's not the delivery of information. It is actually the delivery of the right information at the right time. And a lot of people mistake that. They just think that if they give them some kind of info, they're satisfied. But the problem is, if you haven't resolved the qualms that they have, this is probably a bigger issue. It could even be the straw that breaks the camel's back for them to say, it's time for me to migrate to a new banking institute or another product of some level. That's my talk. All right. For a change, we are done on time. It's very rare. It's very rare. So it is tradition here. We do this every single time. I will never force you, but I will ask you. At the end of every single meetup, we all come together and we take a group photo. If you're comfortable with that, I ask you to come to the front. We'll take a group photo, and then we can get back to hanging out, networking, making connections, and all that good stuff.